On this late night edition, 82 Koreans are set to meet with long-lost relatives they were separated from more than 60 years ago. Tomorrow, after all the delays and cancellations, cross-border family reunions begin. On a different note, prosecuting North Korea for crimes against humanity. It is a hot subject at the UN and in Washington. South Korean lawmakers discuss pending bills over this matter. The euphoria of the Korean ladies clinching gold in the short track relay is still fresh in the minds of many Korean fans. But the games are not over yet. We have the updates, so stay with us for these and more. Welcome to Late Night Edition. I'm Daniel Che with this hour's latest. South and North Korea will resume reunions for war-torn families on Thursday for the first time in more than 3 years. Ahead of the landmark event, dozens of elderly South Koreans gathered near the inter-Korean border to ready themselves for the reunion. Our Moon Gun-young reports from Sokcho.
83-year-old Chang Chun will meet his brother on Thursday for the first time in 63 years. A sibling he thought was dead until a few years ago. They'll reunite tomorrow for the first time since the Korean War tore apart their family.
This will be the first and the last time for me to meet my brother. 63 years have passed already. Considering how long I have to live, this will be my only chance.
He is one of the 82 elderly South Koreans who gathered in a resort near the eastern port city of Sokcho on Wednesday, one day before they'll be crossing the heavily fortified border only 50 kilometers away into North Korea. It will be the first reunion in more than 3 years for the peninsula's divided families. The South Korean Red Cross had initially arranged meetings for 83 South Koreans, but one had to bow out due to health problems. This has only highlighted the fact that time is running out for the peninsula's divided families, and the chief of the South Korean Red Cross is fully aware.
Originally, 83 separated family members were supposed to come, but one had health issues, so the total number now stands at 82. 26 of them are over the age of 90. It has been 3 years and 4 months since the last encounter with our northern delegates, and this will provide us the opportunity to meet face-to-face and share our opinions on a humanitarian basis.
Earlier in the day, the reunion participants went through health checkups conducted by the medical staff that will be traveling with them to North Korea and received a brief lecture on the do's and don'ts while meeting with their relatives in North Korea. At about 8 a.m. Thursday morning, the 82 South Koreans and their families will board a bus and leave for the cross-border transit office in Gosung, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive from here, and then cross into North Korea at 10 a.m. Korea time. The reunion set to begin at 3 in the afternoon will be bittersweet, as the chances of any of these divided family members meeting again are slim, if not none. Moon Gun-young, ARIRANG News, Sokcho.
The South Korean Parliamentary Committee in charge of Foreign Affairs met Wednesday to discuss pending bills over a human rights situation in North Korea. But according to our Kim Young-gil, rival lawmakers had different ideas about how they should proceed.
Lawmakers from the ruling Missionary Party and the main opposition Democratic Party showed clear differences over pending North Korean human rights bills at Wednesday's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee. The Missionary Party's floor leader, Choi Kyung-hwan, said passage should come sooner rather than later.
The North Korean human rights bill should be passed as soon as possible. The UN has already urged North Korea to stop violating people's rights and for China to stop the repatriation of North Korean refugees. We should be the ones at the forefront.
The two parties have each submitted 5 bills since 2005, calling for measures that would improve the lives of the North Korean people. The Missionary Party's proposals have mainly called for documenting the human rights situation in North Korea, supporting human rights activities, and helping groups that aid North Korean defectors. The DP's proposals have focused more on supporting cooperation between the South and North and providing humanitarian aid. While Democratic Party lawmaker Chung Chang-nae welcomed the discussions on the bills, he said the timing was inappropriate.
Both parties should go ahead and talk about the pending bills, but legislating them may affect North Korea's attitude towards South Korea, especially at a time when we are going ahead with the family reunions, and relations with North Korea are improving.
Political analysts say the opposition party's stance reflects concerns that a hardline approach to the North Korean human rights situation could anger Pyongyang and worsen relations. Although the parliamentary committee lawmakers did not agree on legislating the bills just yet, they did agree to proceed with fine-tuning them. The U.S. and Japan adopted legislation on the North Korean human rights situation in 2004 and 2006, respectively. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
North Korea has detained yet another foreigner, this time an Australian missionary. 75-year-old John Short's wife told Reuters that he was arrested by Pyongyang's Public Security Bureau on Sunday. Short was reportedly questioned about handing out religious pamphlets printed in Korean. Australia, which does not have diplomatic relations with North Korea, is using its embassy in Seoul and the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang to look into the case. Pyongyang has been holding Korean-American missionary Kenneth Bae in custody for more than a year now on charges he was trying to overthrow the North Korean regime. Shifting our focus to other parts of our world, the Islamist militant group responsible for Sunday's bus bombing in northeastern Egypt, it has warned all tourists to leave the Sinai Peninsula by Thursday or risk being subject to further attacks. Meanwhile, the first group of 15 Korean survivors returned home Wednesday evening. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The Egyptian government says it is doing all it can to protect tourists in the wake of a threat by an al-Qaeda-linked Islamist militant group for all tourists to leave the country by Thursday or be subject to further attacks. The government said it is not sure of the authenticity of the threat posted on a Twitter account affiliated with the group, but said it has taken extra precautions. Egyptian Prime Minister Hassan al-Blablawi said on state television that the group Ansar Beit al-Maqdis is becoming a threat to foreign tourists in the country. The Islamist group claims to be responsible for the suicide attack on Sunday that killed 4 people, including 3 Koreans and an Egyptian. The Korean government has issued a travel warning for the Sinai Peninsula and is working to find out whether there are still any Korean tourists in the region. The Korean Foreign Ministry says it is doing all it can to uncover the motive for the attack.
We are working with the Egyptian government and the international community to learn the reasons behind the attack.
Korean government officials dispatched to the scene after the attack are currently working to help the Koreans who survived the attack and ensure they get home safely. The first group of 15 survivors arrived in Korea on Wednesday, while the other half are scheduled to return home on Thursday. As for the 3 Korean nationals who died, their families are currently in Egypt and will return to Korea with their bodies soon. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
With the housing market here in the nation sputtering along, the Land Ministry has some ideas about how to get it back on track. Ministry officials laid out their plans in a status report to the president earlier today. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
During a policy briefing at the presidential office of Cheongwadae on Wednesday, the Ministry of Land, Maritime and Environment called for revitalizing the housing market by easing restrictions. The pitch included a number of measures. Regarding the reconstruction of houses, the Land Ministry said there is a need to scale back on some of the policies imposed back in 2006 that were put into place to quell housing speculation. That could include abolishing a policy that requires homeowners to pay back some of the profits gained from rising house prices after renovations. Limiting a household to buying just one house in some areas of the Seoul metropolitan area would also no longer apply. The ministry also wants to ease the eligibility for government-backed mortgage loans to include more home buyers.
first-time buyers are currently only eligible for loans that have interest rates in the 1% range. But with the change, those who have not owned a house for 5 years would be eligible as well. The ministry aims to make public rental housing available to 90,000 households this year and to 500,000 households by the year 2017. The set of measures is being introduced in part to counter soaring housing rental prices that have risen since 2008. The goal is to ease the imbalance between supply and demand in Cheonse, a rental system unique to Korea that requires one large lump sum deposit. The task of boosting the nation's faltering housing market has been a major issue for economic policymakers, as more than half of Korean households' assets are in real estate. And because of that, many fear that the ailing housing market could have a negative impact on the nation's consumption, which makes up a majority of the nation's gross domestic product. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Korea's export-driven economy is still being hauled along by 6 industries, while growth in other sectors remained flat in recent years. Our Connie Kim reports.
Korean exports are still driven by the 6 industries that power the country's economy, while growth in other industries has remained stagnant. Local market researcher CEO Score said Wednesday the combined annual overseas sales of 133 companies from 2011 through the third quarter of 2013 was more than $421 billion. Of the total, 94% of the company's overseas sales came from Korea's 6 main export industries: IT and electronics, automobiles, construction, petrochemicals, shipbuilding, and steel. During the same period, however, the telecommunications, pharmaceutical, and transportation industries saw their overseas sales remain flat. CEO Score representative Park Ju-gun said the 6 major industries are crucial to the export-driven Korean economy and added that companies need to invest more to stay competitive.
Exports of IT products and automobiles are expected to continue to grow, while it may take the shipbuilding industry, which is especially highly dependent on global economic trends, more time to recover.
Samsung Group had the highest proportion of overseas sales, which represented more than 70% of its total sales from 2011 to 2013, followed by LG and Kumho Asiana. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
A consortium of Korean engineering firms has won a contract worth about $6 billion to build an oil refinery in Iraq. The joint venture, led by Hyundai Engineering and Construction, is made up of 4 builders, including GS E&C and SK E&C. The refinery will be built in Karbala, some 120 kilometers southwest of Baghdad, with construction expected to take 4.5 years. The multi-billion-dollar order is the single largest industrial plant project won by Korean firms so far. On a different note, a more somber note, that is, at least 25 people were killed and hundreds more injured during clashes between anti-government protesters and riot police in Kiev, Ukraine on Tuesday. It's by far the worst violence seen in the capital since the mass protests erupted 3 months ago. The leaders on both sides of the dispute remain far apart. Our Paul Yi reports.
Clashes between riot police and protesters in the capital of Ukraine have resulted in the deaths of at least 25 people, with 241 others suffering injuries, according to the health ministry. It's the worst outbreak of violence since demonstrations erupted against President Viktor Yanukovych 12 weeks ago. On Tuesday, Ukrainian police charged thousands of protesters at the capital's Independence Square using rubber bullets, smoke, and stun grenades. Earlier, the authorities had set protesters an early deadline to leave the area or face, quote, tough measures. The demonstrators responded by throwing petrol bombs, fireworks, and stones at police. Opposition leader Vitaly Klitschko told women and children to leave the central square, but he urged some 25,000 protesters to defend the camp, saying they were there to stay. Tuesday's events erupted after demonstrators attempted to march on Parliament, demanding constitutional reform.
Unfortunately, there seems to be no progress being made regarding the matter. We have proposed a constitutional amendment, which hasn't even been submitted.
Klitschko held emergency talks with President Yanukovych's office early Wednesday. However, he returned to the central Kiev square without any agreement on ending the violence. Following the meeting, President Yanukovych said in a statement that the protesters were to blame for the deadly violence and called on opposition leaders to distance themselves from radical forces. The international community has called on both sides to show restraint, with the U.S. saying it was appalled by the violence. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
The curtain comes down on the Sochi Winter Olympics very soon. And of course, naturally, more and more attention is being drawn to the next host city, Pyeongchang. There is a special place at Olympic Park that provides a preview of the Korean Olympic venue and all that it can present. Our Olympics correspondent, Song Ji-sun, files this report from Sochi.
The spirit of the Olympics is alive and well in Sochi. But just a few minutes after entering Olympic Park, you can also get a sense of what the 2018 Winter Games will be like. The Pyeongchang House is just before the main competition venues at the Olympic Park. Athletes and sports fans can get a preview of what the Winter Olympics will look like at Korea's Alpine City less than 4 years from now. From learning about Pyeongchang's location on the Korean peninsula and experiencing Korean medicine to watching cultural performances every day, visitors can get a better idea of the host city and the nation of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. The venue is especially popular among Russians who are curious about the city that will take the reins in 4 years.
I think that it will be good Olympic Games and maybe better than now. I hope that I will be in these Olympic Games in Pyeongchang.
And it's not too early to think about Pyeongchang. Athletes who have already wrapped up their games at Sochi are now setting their sights on Pyeongchang, and so are their families.
We're parents of an athlete at these games, and I'm very, very impressed. I mean, obviously, they're quite ready for the Olympics. There's no question about that.
After hitting the 100,000 visitor mark on Saturday, Pyeongchang House is rising as a must-see spot among Olympic fans.
Over 15,000 visitors drop by at the Pyeongchang House a day, meaning 1 out of 5 people in Olympic Park drop by. They get surprisingly interested after viewing the exhibition. And more than 500 Russians have already requested that they'd love to volunteer at the 2018 Pyeongchang Games.
Visitor number 201,800 to the Pyeongchang House, or 2018 with 2 zeros on the end, will win a free flight to and from the Games if the winner wants to volunteer at the 2018 Games. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News, Sochi.
And now Stephen Che joins us in the Sports Center for the latest Olympic news and of course much more. Hello there, Stephen.
Hey, Daniel.
So let's start with one of the biggest events of the day as well as the entire games, and that's the latest figure skating short program which is going on even as we speak. Who should we look out for?
Well, first of all, if you're watching this and are not tuned into, or rather if you're watching this and not tuned into that, thank you very much. But luckily, all the medal favorites go later, including the one we should look out for, defending Olympic champion Kim Yeon-ah, who goes 17th. Now, Kim is chasing for history, trying for back-to-back gold medals in figure skating, a feat that's been completed only twice before. But the points world record holder will be up against a deep field of talented skaters, including Russia's Yulia Lipnitskaya and longtime rival Mao Asada. Well, either way, the medals will be decided after the free skate program tomorrow. Now let's get to some other medal contests. First, it's the Team Sprint Classic Finals for both the men and women in cross country. Now the ladies go first. Team Norway crossed the finish line at 16 minutes and 4.05 seconds, 9 seconds faster than Finland for the nation's 4th gold in cross country. But don't feel too bad for Finland though, because on the men's side, they won the gold, coming in less than a second ahead of Russia in a close finish. And moving on to finals for the men's alpine skiing giant slalom, as well as the men's and women's snowboard parallel giant slalom were held on the slopes. First, in alpine skiing, American Ted Ligety had the best combined time to beat out two Frenchmen, both by fractions of a second. Meanwhile, let's go to the snowboard parallel giant slalom. For the ladies, Switzerland's Patricia Kummer bested her Japanese opponent for the gold, while for the men, Russia's Vic Wild won it for the home team for their 6th overall gold at the Games. Now let's wrap it all up in Sochi with the day 14 schedule. And let me say, it's going to be a big day. Now on the mountain, the men's ski cross is the first medal contest of the day, while the ladies ski halfpipe finals go on in the evening. Then at 5:30 p.m. local time, it's the gold medal match in women's curling as Canada and Sweden go head-to-head. Next, it's a big moment for Kim Yeona and the world's best figure skaters as they compete in the free skate program for the gold at the Iceberg Skating Palace. And finally, Team Canada and Team USA are gearing up for what's likely to be an epic matchup in the women's ice hockey finals. All right, so let's leave all of that there and get to football. South Korea's manager Hong Myung-bo unveiled his roster for the friendly match against Greece, and two big names are back in red, Park Ju-young and Cha Do-ri. Now long overlooked by Coach Hong for his lack of playing time, the 28-year-old Park is finally getting his chance to play. He has 23 goals in 61 international matches, so if he's in top form, he can be a huge asset. Meanwhile, Cha, a national team vet, was also chosen on the 24-man roster to compete for the left-back spot. Now 33 years old, he last played for Korea in a World Cup qualifier about 27 months ago. Now we move on to golf. The WGC Accenture Match Play Championship is going on, and without Tiger or Phil playing, a certain Irishman has been named the favorite. With 12-1 betting odds, Rory McIlroy, ranked 7th in the world, has been pegged to lift the trophy and the winner's share of $1.5 million at the Match Play tournament. And the brackets are set for the 64 top golfers who will battle it out one-on-one until only one remains as the champion. And ending it all off, let's get to action in the V-League. LIG Insurance faced off against Hyundai Capital at home in Gumi. Now there's no home court advantage here as LIG drops the first two sets 25-18 and 25-22 to the second best team in the league. Now LIG seeks to take back the third set, but Hyundai Capital takes charge 25-20 and they win in straight sets for 3 points. And that does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Chen. Have a great evening and I'll see you later for more from the world of sports.
Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, February 20th here in Korea, and I'm your weathercaster Kim Bo-kyung. The first day of family reunions at Mount Kumgang begin on Thursday. However, it doesn't look like the weather is going to fully cooperate from Thursday through Friday. Mount Kumgang is forecast to get 2 to 7 centimeters of snow. However, it will clear up and Saturday looks to be a sunny one. In addition to Gangwon-do Province, Gyeongsang-pukdo Province will get 1 to 5 centimeters of snow, and the rest of the nation will enjoy mild winter weather conditions similar to Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday's readings, Seoul peaks at 6 degrees, meanwhile Gwangju and Busan hit 8 and 10 degrees respectively. Taking a look at other regions, Daejeon and Jeju make it to 8 degrees while Dokdo tops out at 2. Well, that's all for Korea, but let's take a look at the international weather.
Well, thank you for that, Po-Gyung and Stephen. And that wraps up the news for this hour. Thank you for watching.